Hi everyone, it's Jan and I am back with another Easter card, and I'm going to use this card to share two super cool techniques with you that I recently learned from Jennifer McGuire. If you have not watched any of her videos, you will want to check them out. Just really creative card maker. She was wanting to do some Copic coloring but wanted a white outline as opposed to the tuxedo memento black outline that we usually get. And so she came up with this technique and I love it. I'm going to use it a lot. The second one is to actually use our embossing powders along with the embossing paste. And this one just kind of blew my mind, and I'm going to come back to it again and again. So let's get started. I'm going to first stamp my image with some very light shell pink. And I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Majig to actually allow me to stamp the image the first time. And then I'm going to do some coloring, and then I'll come back and we will stamp again. And so using the Stamp-A-Majig allows me to make sure that I am putting my stamp back in the same position. I found I didn't even have to use that little clear sheet. I just put the corner of my card up in the corner and then did my stamping with a light color of pink. It will be a little hard for you to see on the screen, but it was dark enough for me to see it. But when you get all of your coloring done, you really can't see it anymore. So use a light color that you can see to do this first image stamp. Not ever going to see it. I am using kind of a ombre of blue-green colors. Use whatever works for you. This is one of those times that you can do really pretty simple coloring. I'm just doing a two-step color with a little bit of shading, but I don't have to be totally perfect because I'm going to kind of clean it up when I finish, and particularly because I'm going to cut this cross out when I'm done. I can fix a lot of things. So I'm just not worrying too much. And I'm not going to go step by step through the coloring on this because you'll probably do a different image. And the technique is really about getting that white line around your image. So again, I'm just using some, going from a light green to some kind of dark aqua and filling that in. I think it'll be really pretty. This technique is really designed to be used with alcohol markers, because if you were to do the embossing first and then colored over it, your marker would stain the embossing powder, that lines that you had done. So you're needing to do that after you finish doing the coloring. But you could use this technique regardless of the type of markers that you're using. It'll give you a really nice image. Now I'm going to use my embossing buddy, and I'm using Versamark ink, and I'm going to line up my stamp again with my Stamp-A-Majig, and that's how I get a really good alignment back in the same place that I stamped the pink image to begin with. And I'm going to use some detail white embossing powder, and I don't know why we hadn't thought of this before. I love it. I just love it. So after I have heat embossed it, you can see how nice and crisp that is. And I'm going to cut this image out. I have some other ones that I'm going to do that I actually have dies to go with them, so that'll make it an even easier project to do. But I really wanted to do this for an Easter card. So now let me show you how I made the background. I'm using some re-inkers in a couple of shades of yellow, but you could use just watercolors, whatever you, distress stains, whatever you have. I am working on some watercolor paper, and because we're going to be doing so many kind of wet techniques with it, I'm putting a little pattern of yellow down, and then we're going to use the embossing paste. I think it's really important to use kind of a thicker card base, and you know my go-to is to go grab some watercolor paper, but if you have a really nice thick cardstock, you could use that as well. But you know me, I'm kind of stuck on using watercolor paper for these kinds of techniques. Just kind of adding some sun rays, very light background, just kind of positioning it, and then you want to get it really, really, really good and dry. And I use my embossing buddy again. Now I'm going to, the first thing I'm going to do is put the embossing paste down. So I'm going to use this stencil that has these little rays going out, and I'm kind of using my cross to see where I want to position those, because I want those rays to be coming out from behind the cross. And then I'm going to use painter's tape to hold this down. I really want to make sure that it's good and tight against the paper, because there's that kind of open area in there that I just need to be a little careful with. And I'm using Wendy Becky embossing paste. And I just say, take your time on this part of it, particularly when you have a stencil that has a little bit of open space like this one does. And it goes, I kind of put it on thin. I still think you get the impact of it, but I just find that I get a lot less messy results if I make sure that the stencil is very tight to the paper, and then I put my embossing paste on and then really clean it off by scraping it across really, really well. Great results. So as soon as you've done that and you're pulling it up, immediately go and submerge your stencil and your knife into some water. Now I'm using embossing tinsel, and what this is, it's a pearlescent embossing powder that has some glitter in it. So if you don't have this embossing tinsel, this one is Bridal Tinsel by Ranger. If you don't have that, try mixing together your own concoction of what you do have. I wanted something that was white and sparkly. And because the embossing paste, I let it dry just a little bit while I went and washed the stencil, but because I wanted it to firm up just a little bit. But because it is wet, it holds onto that embossing powder. So I'm going to let it sit over there for just a minute. And here is my favorite trick of the week. When I have made a mess with embossing powder or glitter, I just go get my masking tape lint roller, pick it up. I have one that I keep in my studio. Now, using embossing powder with this, if you have let the embossing paste that's underneath set up a little bit, then you're not going to get bubbles. So that's why you want to let it dry a little bit. But look how cool this is. You see you've got that pearlescent and you've got the glitter. It's just super, super, super cool. Totally going to use this for a lot of other cards. Now, because my card front is a little heavier, I'm using quite a bit of adhesive. You know, when you do wet media techniques, sometimes your paper wants to warp a little bit, and so I tend to use just a little extra adhesive to make it work. But super simple. And now I'm going to take the ink that I actually use for the watercoloring for the background and just kind of go around and define the edge. I didn't really want to distress this with, say, maybe a brown ink color. I wanted to keep it in the pale yellows, and so, but I wanted to have a defined edge. I think sometimes that gives a really nice finished look to a card. And I'm going to pop my cross up on some dimensionals and position it over the sun rays. And I'm telling you, those two techniques combined, I just think make a stunning card. But you know me, I can always find a place to put a little bit of extra glitter. So I'm getting my Wink of Stella clear glitter pen out and just going into some of those internal colored spaces. I love how the Wink of Stella pen lays down over Copic coloring. It gives you a great effect. So there you have it. There's our card for today. Two super, super techniques that I know you're going to see me use again and again. I hope you will try them for yourself. because there's so much light on this, I'm afraid that you're not really seeing how very cool that embossing powder is on top of embossing paste. I love it. I've done about 3 or 4 other things just to play with it a little bit since then because I just love the impact that you have. I appreciate you joining me today. If you are not a subscriber to my channel, I would invite you to subscribe. That's the way you're going to find out when I post new tutorials and videos. And for those of you that are subscribers, I so appreciate you all and invite you to follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, and Twitter. That's where I kind of talk about things that are in process. So I hope you'll join me there and let me catch up with you as well. You all take care. Have a blessed Easter and be sure to save some time for creative play. I'll be back to share another project with you real soon.